Okay. Can you tell the story about the time that you almost had to shoot somebody in the shop?
Okay. We had a customer came in through the door. It was just your mother and I by ourselves working the store alone. And this large individual comes in the door and he's carrying something in his hand and he's muttering to himself, "Screwed me. Now I'm fixing to kill you. I'm going to kill you."
Yeah.
And he's advancing on me with purpose.
All right, Father, what are you smoking today?
Today we have a Drew Estate Liga Privada number 9.
Liga Privada number 9.
Another one of my favorite sticks.
Have I ever seen you smoke that one before?
Yes, over the years. I haven't smoked one lately. So I've been off to different things, and these are rather expensive, so I don't try to smoke as many of these.
How much is one of those?
About $20.
Oh my gosh.
That's why I don't smoke very many of them anymore.
I'm about to say, I was like, I don't even spend like, $50 on a shirt, let alone $20 on a cigar that lasts like 3 minutes.
And it lasted like an hour and a half, but I understand your point.
So for anybody who's actually watching this, we do not talk about cigars for the entirety of the podcast. We don't. My father-in-law listened to the first 2 minutes and he was like, "I don't want to listen to y'all talk about cigars the whole time." And I'm like, we only talk about it for like a minute because we're in a cigar shop.
That's exactly right.
And thanks again to Casa de Monte Cristo and Liz for letting us record here again.
Yep. Liz is great.
We appreciate it.
I can always say. Thanks, Liz.
Thank you. We appreciate it. And today I was like, kind of like thinking, I was like, what do I want to talk about? And I was kind of going back and forth between like two ideas. And I figured like today that we could kind of really just talk about kind of like you, but also like what you do for a living and like business in general.
All right.
Because I feel like I'm kind of like ignorant about business because we had a conversation not too long ago about profit and I didn't even know like how do you determine what profit is, but we'll get into that. But I kind of wanted to kind of do an introduction. And before anybody says anything, I'm asking these questions not because I'm trying to like make you feel bad, Dad. I just want to like set the stage of like, information. So like, what's your education level?
I have a high school diploma and I have about 87 college hours.
Yeah. What did you go to college for, or we're going to college for?
I was on track to get a business degree.
Yeah.
But I was really there to play football. So
yeah, you told me that growing up, it was like one of the biggest mistakes of your life, dropping out of college.
Yeah. I mean, it was foolish. It turns out I didn't really need the degree.
Yeah.
But I still consider it to be a foolishly missed opportunity to acquire something of, something substantially valuable that was already, I was under scholarship. And so it was paid for me. And to leave all of that was, even though in the end I didn't really need it, but nevertheless, not the best decision.
Do you like agree with like Charlie Kirk when he says like college is a complete like waste of time? Like you don't learn anything. Like him and Candace Owens are both like on the college is kind of useless kind of bandwagon right now.
Depends on what your degree is going to be in.
Mm-hmm.
If you're in STEM or if you're in any kind of degree where you need credentials, then no, it's not a waste of time. But if you're going to get just run of the mill degree and come out, I think they're coupling that with the expense of college now and the amount of debt that most of these college students are coming out with. And
you're like not getting the value out of it.
Yeah, I think it's not I think the value proposition is not there for probably a majority of students who are in colleges now.
Yeah.
I think I hate to say, college is just across the board not worth. No, it is. I mean, it's just, for what you're getting for what it's costing you. I'm not so sure for a lot of people it makes a lot of sense.
And I ask about your education level, not because like it's the end all be all, but because like I have a bachelor's degree, I have a master's degree, and I work on my PhD. And I feel like just now in the last year, I can finally keep up with you. Like you're like one of the most knowledgeable, well-informed, educated people I know. And like even more so than some people I work with. I mean, like you're so knowledgeable about everything. Like why is that? Like what do you do?
Well, I mean, acquiring knowledge
Yeah.
can happen in lots of different ways. It's not, you don't just acquire knowledge going to a university. And most of the knowledge that I acquired just out of curiosity, reading books, listening to people give lectures. The internet's really helped out with it in the last decade or so with YouTube. You can go back and hear really top people in their field give lectures.
Yeah.
You can sit in on classes, for crying out loud. And so in colleges.
Yeah, you can audit them. You can just go sit in there.
And you can audit them. And so the reason I know a lot is because I have a curious mind and I want to learn. I didn't really want to learn back when I was younger and I was in college.
How old were you when you started really wanting to learn?
Probably in my mid-30s.
I would say I kind of got there at 28. I really wanted to know and learn a lot of stuff. And I think I owe a lot of that to, I remember watching this video clip of Ben Shapiro. I remember the day it happened. I was in my car and I was driving to work and Ben Shapiro came on and he was talking about, he was in a debate about, I don't remember what debate he was in, but they were talking about the kind of disparity between, the different ethnicities that are arrested. And he says it has nothing to do about race and has everything to do about culture and about lack of fathers in the home or just breakdown of the family. And it just kind of it was this moment where the world opened up to me. And I just that moment, everything from then on. Do you remember me talking to you about that?
Yeah, I do. I just remember it was kind of an aha moment for you.
Yeah.
And, it's, the argument that he makes is if you've got a sect of the population that's 10 or 12% of the population, but they're committing 30-40% of the crimes.
Yeah.
Is it that they're just being caught and other people aren't, or are they been falsely prosecuted? I'm sure some of that happens, but by and large, he's saying that these people in this group are actually committing more crimes, per capita.
But then people, I think often when you recognize okay, this is really actually happening, but then people need to know the why. And when he said it's a father absence culture kind of issue in some walks of life.
Yeah. The problem is it depends on who wants to think of what the why is.
Yeah.
If you have a worldview, a lot of people will say, well, the why is because they live in poverty. Okay. And they come from, it's poverty what creates all this. And, what Ben Shapiro would probably say is one of the reasons they're in poverty is because there's not a 2-parent household. And, it harkens me back to something that Thomas Sowell has said. Mm-hmm. He said, if you're talking about the Black community, he said, in the Black community, the poverty rate's very high. But in those families where there's 2 parents present, Black 2-parent families are actually 2%. Their poverty rate is actually 2% lower than white people with 2 parents in the household.
Yeah. There is this really rigorous study done of all the different research that have been done about father absence and the impact it has. And after controlling for race and socioeconomic status, poverty levels, father absence, had such an impact on outcomes on kids. So kids who are living in poverty, but who have, like you said, have 2 parents, they do rather well.
Fathers are very important. I've always told you that we understand that fathers are really important for boys,
especially boys, because of the maturity they have. Their brains develop slower than females. That's the truth.
Until you had me read that book, The Boy Crisis.
Yeah.
Okay. I thought that fathers were even more important for girls, and my rationale behind it is a girl who has a father figure, whether in the home or at least involved in her life, sees what a man looks like, having it modeled for her, that she's less likely to go out and have an unwanted pregnancy, less likely to be involved with somebody who's going to mistreat her.
Well, you're right on that front. They did a study of the girls who had dads in the home. Not a single one of them had a pregnancy before the age of 19 or 20. Not a single one of them.
And I just think when you have something modeled for you and you have something to pull from, I think it's a lot easier for a girl to be, with this guy, and this guy does something and it's inappropriate or whatever, and she could just say to herself, I never saw my dad do that.
Yeah.
And so you've got that issue, and then so you've got ever since we read The Boy Crisis, I've had more appreciation for the importance of fathers with the boys. Even one of the little thing you're talking about, rough play. And after reading The Boy Crisis, I understand now that something I never thought of. They make the point of how important rough play is for boys. And the angle that I took from it that I wasn't even aware of is how rough play, when fathers rough play with boys, they're setting rules. No, we can't do that. Somebody's going to get hurt. No, we're going to play this way. That we're going to do it this way. And that one thing teaches boys that there are limits in this world. And it allows them
it teaches them how to temper their kind of, risk-taking, kind of aggressive nature that is kind of biologically kind of innate within boys. I know a lot of people will disagree with me about it, but it's actually very true. I'm just saying, and so, that rough play really helps boys to temper their aggressiveness in order to keep playing. Because if you're rough playing and then you punch, your brother in your little brother in the head, and the dad's playing with them and he's like, no, we're not going to play this anymore. Well, the kids are having so much fun. They'll temper their behavior, and that kind of that inhibitory control of behavior is really important, and it extends well into their life.
Yeah. So, so I agree with the people who say, culturally, if there's not fathers in the home, that wherever they're not present, there's going to be bigger challenges for those families.
And just kind of the nature and disposition and temperament of girls in general, they're just more conscientious. They're not as aggressive. And girls in general, I'm not saying every single woman on the planet, but how we assert our aggressiveness is not usually physical. It's more in the social aspect. And so that rough play is not as important for us. It is important, but for boys in particular, because it's almost like they have to explicitly be taught. They have to explicitly be taught how to control and temper themselves. Whereas girls, they're kind of innately in a way where they don't have to explicitly be taught how to do that. It's kind of easier for them.
Exactly. And then another thing, one of the reasons why I thought that it was so important for girls is I remember hearing Dr. Laura Schlesinger always say that, the morality is she said, our morality is really set by our women. Mm-hmm. What they let their, the kind of behavior they're going to accept from men before they couple with them.
Yeah.
Or be with them will determine the morality. And so, from hearing her say that made a lot of sense to me. And I thought, okay, well, if you have a father in the house and then these women are going to require more out of whatever men they have in their lives, that's going to be better for them, which in turn is going to be better for society.
Yeah. I feel like growing up, I saw the way you took care of mom. You took care of each other because like I said in the first podcast, mom really modeled well for me, take care of your man and how do you take care of them? And she would just model that by she was always really well aware of when you were stressed out. So when I was a kid, mom would be like, your dad's just really stressed out. Right. And I just didn't see it. Mm-hmm. But now that I'm older and I'm married, I see exactly what she's talking about. And nobody else can see it, but you, the wife, can see it.
Oh, absolutely.
And so you take care of your man. And so mom modeled that really well, which I'm on the first podcast. And then on the flip side, you as well tried everything you could to take care of mom as well.
Yes.
Making it to where, she could, if she chose to not work, that was an option for her if she wanted to. She always worked with the businesses, but you know what I mean?
I do.
So,
well, a situation where she didn't, it wasn't a requirement.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
She could choose. Yeah.
She could choose. And that was always important for me.
Yeah, exactly. Kind of want to go back to what we're talking about. So out of all the career paths you could have chosen, why, so actually let's just do this. What do you and mom do? What is y'all's job?
Your mom and I are in the pawn shop business. We're pawnbrokers.
But you're entrepreneurs, you're business owners.
We're entrepreneurs, we're business owners. Our first business was a Marble Slab Creamery, an ice cream store back when we were 25 years old.
Mom's she's doing this.
She didn't like that business, and I didn't like it either. It was
people are not nice.
And it was we learned pretty quick that food service was not something that was in our blood. And
just because of the customers? Why? What's wrong with food service?
Food service is a very it's a very it's very labor intensive, and you're just on. In the pawn shop business, I can put a piece of merchandise that's for sale on a shelf, and 3 weeks from now, it's not going to go spoiled.
So, out of all the career paths like you could have chosen, why did you want to be an entrepreneur or a business owner? Like, I mean, literally, Dad, you could have done anything. You could have been a politician.
Yeah.
You could have been an engineer. Like, you're really smart. You're really knowledgeable. You always like a self-starter. You're motivated. Mom's the same way. But like she's all artistic and
So
creative.
the question is
why? Out of all the things, why?
Okay, why did you want to own your own business? Is basically what you're saying.
Like, yeah, out of all the things you could have done, and why pawn shops too?
Well, I will start with the first part of why I own my own business. I would lay that at the feet of my father. My father was always his own boss, and he always used to beat in my head, boy. You need to make your own way in the world. Don't be working for somebody else. When you're working for somebody else, you're making them rich. You go do your own thing, and that way you're in control. Better to be in control of something that's not very big than being a small part of something that's huge.
Yeah, I don't think people realize that when you are working for a company, your work product, anything you create or do, any ideas you have, they own. It is theirs. I mean, with Google, like I used to do this thing when I was, in public education, when I was an advanced academic specialist, we would do this kind of thing called Genius Hours. Kind of this idea was kind of coined from something that Google did, where every week they would let their employees spend an hour working on a passion project. And as long as it furthered the goals of the company, Google, they could do it. And so from that, I think Google Drive or Google Map, like some of the Google products that people are well aware of was created from that. But those people, they didn't like own any of it. Google owns everything.
That's true. But I just want to back up on something I said. Just because I say that doesn't mean that people can't have a good life and do well for themselves working for somebody else. Yeah. That can be, there's plenty of situations out there where people work for companies and do very well. That can happen too. It just depends on what you want out of life, how you want your life structured and organized. Each one, like I've always said, each one has its pros and cons.
So why pawn shops though?
Well, my dad was in the pawn shop business, and I started that whenever I was, he bought the first pawn shop when I was in high school, and I just liked it. I was good at it. I enjoyed it. It's something that I enjoyed doing. It's interacting with the people and just the wheeling and dealing and this.
So you don't get bored, Dad, because like you're really smart. And like I work in a job where I'm always having to think and learn, and like there's always a problem to be fixed. And I'm not trying to like go down on the business because like it's a great business and like you, Mom, like put blood, sweat, and tears into it. But I'm asking in a way like I used to work there, like, and when I was younger, like in the summers, like I would work there and make extra money. Or when me and Jordan, when we were first married, we were broke, I'd come and work. But like, it's not intellectually taxing. How do I say this, Dad, in the right way?
Because you're just thinking about what happens on the counter.
Okay. Explain.
There's a lot more to the pawn shop business than what happens on the counter with the customer. You're just thinking about that.
So you don't do the counters. Like you don't do the counter.
I don't even work at the counter anymore.
Well, yeah. Well, what do you do that's I don't want to sound like it's like an accusation. Okay, Dad. So what is it? What parts of the pawn shop business are intellectually taxing for you that gets you
managing the staff?
Okay.
Very difficult.
Why?
Because you're trying to get other people to do things as close to the level as you do them yourself, which is almost impossible. And in order to that you're operating in such a way, it's very easy for you to go dress your son.
Yeah.
Okay. How much more challenging is it to figure out a way to get him dressed himself properly and the same time you could do it?
Oh my gosh, you're right. And I think that's one of the pitfalls of being a parent sometimes is because like we know that we'll do it faster and better and quicker. And so sometimes like I'll get lazy and I'll just do it. But in actuality, like he has to do it himself. And so He goes slower and I have to ask 10 times, 15
Okay.
times.
So is it challenging trying to orchestrate coming up with whatever procedures you need to come up with, the way that you speak to him, the approach you take? I'm sure that's changing all the time.
Oh yeah. I mean, I feel like me and Jordan are like having like parental meetings all the time. Like we call each other and he's like, how are the kids today? And I'm like, this is what happened. This is what I tried. And he wouldn't do this. And I did this over here. And he's like, maybe we should do this. Maybe we should do that. It's like a shareholders meeting where we're trying to figure out how to make the stock go up or something.
Let me ask you this. Can you do exactly the same thing with Jack?
No, they're completely different people.
Okay. So stop you there. I've got 9 employees. And they're each interacting with customers on my behalf. They're representing me and your mother, okay?
Yes.
And they're doing complicated transactions. These are pawn loans, which have to have a certain amount of specificity that has to be in the descriptions. And we're dealing with firearms. And you've messed with the ATF 4473 forms.
Yeah.
And you know how complex those are, okay?
Yeah.
So I've got to make sure.
Because if they leave something blank or don't do a check mark, isn't it like a violation against what does ATF stand for again?
Well, it's BATS, Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms.
Okay.
We just call it ATF.
Yeah.
But it's actually the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms. Okay.
Yeah.
So how do you, without putting your own hands on everything, get these people to perform at as high a level as you can? That's
how do you motivate
different.
them? How do you put controls around them to have them perform without taking their autonomy away?
Yes.
So it's like some weird social experiment.
It's like a giant chess game.
Ah, I get it.
And you've got these disparate, personalities. What works for this one person over here doesn't work with this person over here, like you've seen with your 2 boys.
Yeah.
Okay. I talk to my guys that work for me different than I talk to my girls who work for me. And not only that, I now have managers and I've got to train them so they can do the thing that I used to do. And train the trainer. You got to
train the trainer how to be a trainer.
Exactly.
I used to do that when I sold insurance. It's not easy.
No, it's not.
It's not easy.
And so, yes, you're thinking about the first level part, about the stuff that's actually on the counter. But there's a lot more to entrepreneurism than just the actual interaction with the customer. It's the whole enchilada. And let me just say, it's interesting how people say, okay, I love to cook. I want to go own a restaurant.
Yeah.
Okay, well, cooking's important.
But it's a small piece of the pie.
The skill set of being a good cook is a completely different skill set than owning a restaurant. Yeah, completely separate skill set.
Because it's the people element.
It's not just that. It's dealing with product, deciding what the product's going to be, how you're going to present it, okay, what your clientele is going to be, how you're going to present that, how you're going to market yourself, your accounting, your rules and regulations and laws that you have to follow, health inspections. Same way with doctors. Doctors who are doctors, but then they own their own practice. You can be a great doctor, but not be horrible businessman at running a practice. Completely separate skill set.
I think this goes back to what you and I have been talking about. I told Mom this too, that I work, at a university and I'm surrounded by, these titans in their field. They're doing cancer research. I mean, they are making discoveries. They are furthering knowledge. They're putting new knowledge into science. They're furthering it, and we're learning new things. But then when I go to some of these classes and I learn, it doesn't, just because they're an expert in their field doesn't necessarily mean that they're good at teaching it to us.
Yes.
Teaching is an art form.
Yes.
It is. And I feel like you're really good at that. So you were saying that how you have to talk to your female and male employees differently. How so? Typically,
because typically guys, you interact with them in a different way. You interact with them as a guy. And you're more blunt and you're more crude and you get the point across. With women, their motivations are a little bit different. You have to talk to them more cerebrally, and you have to explain things in a different way so that you don't come off as being oppressive
or like an a-hole or condescending.
Exactly.
Or
condescending.
like you're like, what's the word I'm looking for? Degrading their identity as an individual.
It's very easy to hurt a female's feelings.
Yeah.
Guys, mean, I'm not saying that they can't get their feelings hurt, but I mean, guys, you just, you slap metaphorically, you could slap them around and, you can slap them around a little bit and it's okay. So it's a whole different thing.
Okay. I want to talk about a couple of things. Some of the questions I have about business that I don't understand. I'm actually really surprised how ignorant I am of how business, like just the idea of the businesses work. So like profit,
Right.
How do you determine what is profit? Like, is profit just, okay, I've paid all my bills, all my operating costs, anything else I bring on outside of that, like once I paid all that, everything that's left over, is that profit?
That's profit is revenues minus expenses.
So yeah.
Okay. So revenues are how much, okay. If you're selling widgets
Yeah.
and you sell, $100,000 in widgets, well, okay, that's your gross revenue. Okay. And, let's say that out of that $100,000 worth of widgets we sold, it cost us $50,000 to acquire those widgets or make those widgets. Okay, but then we also have other expenditure. That's the net, what they call the net profit. That's the net cost of what it costs to produce. But then you have other costs associated with it. You got, if you have a building where you're selling your widgets, okay, you either have building cost or rent. You've got insurance. If you got employees, you have payroll. You've got taxes. You got utilities. If I've got a phone, I got to pay for my phone. If I got lights, all of these expenses go into it. And so you take all of that away. So if you sold $100,000 in widgets, the widgets cost you $50,000 to either acquire or produce. Let's say that you had all these other expenses would added up to $30,000. Now we're at 80. And we've taken everything out of that. Then what's left over is profit. And in this
20.
scenario that we're talking about, there's a $20,000 profit.
Okay. What do people mean when they say they put money back into the business? Like, can I have an example of what that would look like? Like, what's an example that you've done in the past? Like, because like you and Mom, in the beginning when you guys made a profit, you'd put it back in the business, right?
Yes. For example, let's say that you put it back in the business by buying a bigger sign out front. We have a 5-foot sign out front, and that's not very big, and people can't see it from very far away. So we've got this profit. We've got let's say we got $10,000 in profit. We can either take that money and go have a vacation, or we can spend that $10,000 on a bigger sign that's going to bring us in more business because it has more visibility and is more likely to bring people into our business. That's putting money back into the business.
What are the things that typically pawn shops do to put money back into the business to grow their business?
Typically, the things that we typically do, signage is important. Nowadays, what we're doing a little more of advertising, internet kind of stuff. Just different types of, there's a constantly change. Our merchandise is constantly evolving and changing. So we're constantly having to come up with new ways to display it in the store, whether we're using, gondolas, shelving, or we're using showcases, all this kind of stuff, lighting, all that kind of stuff. So you're constantly dealing with those kinds of issues. How we're going to deal with shoplifting, people taking off the pieces, stuff like that. And what was the last thing they said? There was another point I was going to make. Oh man. Yeah, but money back into the business. One of the things that we did is to put the money back in the business is acquire the property that we were using, actually buy it, as opposed to just leasing it. So we're gaining equity in the property. And also when you own the property, you're not at the behold, you don't have a landlord. And so you don't have to worry about your lease being expired and being kicked out.
Yeah.
Things like that.
Your whole business could crumple if you're not at the same location.
Exactly. That can happen. And it can happen in lots of different ways. I mean, somebody who, if you have somebody who owns like a concrete truck business,
yeah,
he could put this money back in the business by buying another concrete truck.
Yeah.
Or buying another dump truck or another piece of equipment.
My next question is, have you ever wanted to make more money? Like, have you and Mom said, like, okay, first of all, you and Mom are very successful. There's no denying you have two separate locations of your pawn shops. But like, have y'all ever I wish we made more money? Or are y'all just happy with how much money y'all bring in?
I mean, yeah, I would say we're pretty content with is what we do with our lifestyle. I mean, can it be more? Yes. Are we trying to make it more? Yeah. But I've always said I felt like that we were successful when I could go to the grocery store,
Yeah.
and I didn't have to pay attention to what I was throwing in the shopping cart.
So there wasn't like a number you're like trying to hit.
No, there was no number. It was really just if we could be successful enough to where mama wasn't required for her to work if she didn't want to. That was important for me. And B, for us to have the just normal stuff. We don't need a big house. We don't need fancy this and fancy that, but to just go do simple things. I don't need to be a millionaire, or there was no benchmark. It was just a lifestyle.
You just want to have, I
just want to have a comfortable life, and I'm content, and more money now is more about security.
Yeah.
Because we don't know what our requirement, our health requirements are going to be 20 years from now, and all of that. So that's, anything more than we make what we have now is really just to give us security so that if unexpected things happen, we can handle that.
It's funny that you mentioned y'all don't need a big house, because my whole life, y'all really were like, we don't need a big house, and we'd rather live in a smaller house so we can pay for you to go to college, so we can pay for you to take trips, so we can go do things as a family. And I feel like that's really I've taken that in on my life. I feel like I'm just not a materialistic person. I've mentioned this, and I feel like that's a lot because mom's not a materialistic person. And I'm just not a person. I can go into a mall and see all these nice things, but I very rarely just feel like I have to have things. I'm just not a person who needs stuff.
I think that's a blessing.
And I think a lot of that has to do with mom, honestly. And then also you, because I also think about a lot of other podcasts I listen to, some of the richest people in the world, they drive Toyota Corollas, or these really just kind of reliable cars. And I mean, you drove this blue truck for years until it died. How much did you buy it for?
The blue truck?
Yeah. It was
$3,000.
Yeah. And then you had another truck that mom found, and it was a Ford, and you drove that up until 2 years ago. How long did you drive that for? Your whole life you drove that dang truck.
We had that truck for 22 years.
Yeah. And then it died.
And if it died, we had 538,000 miles on it. And if it hadn't died, I'd still be driving it today.
Yeah. And so I think, and y'all have never bought a new car, I don't think, ever.
We bought one new car, two.
Which one?
Mama's white car was new. She had never had a new car in her life, and I wanted her to experience that one time.
Yeah.
And then when that car went down, we had the deal that was made by Infinity to the other car required us to get a new car. But that's it. I mean, if it hadn't been for that, we would only had just the one, just to experience it the one time. We don't buy new cars.
Okay. Yeah. And so that's just kind of talking about the lifestyles that people who are wealthy make. Sometimes it's just about not spending a lot of money.
Well, a book that had a very profound effect on me was The Millionaire Next Door.
Oh, really?
And that book, it talks about, they went out and they interviewed, 2,000 millionaires.
Okay.
And they just looked at the lifestyle of the millionaires. And here's what, millionaires these are people who are worth $1 million, not people who make $1 million. There's a difference. Okay. You can make $1 million and spend $1 million and you're still broke. You know what I mean? You just, but these are people who have a net worth of $1 million, which means if you pay off all your stuff, you still have $1 million worth of value. Yeah. I mean, if you have $1 million house and $950,000 on it, you don't have $1 million. You have $50,000.
Yeah.
Okay. So, and so they went and interviewed these millionaires. Millionaires, number one vehicle that millionaire drove, F-150 pickup truck. Used. Most millionaires bought used vehicles. Mm-hmm. Most millionaires lived in the same house they bought when they were younger, and when their income level went up, they didn't go get a bigger house. Now, they may have remodeled the house, made it nice, but they didn't increase their lifestyle when their wealth went up. They invested that wealth and added more wealth to the wealth.
That's funny because y'all live in the same house I grew up in, and y'all have remodeled it. And it's a great house. I love the house. Y'all live on a big piece of property too. That's awesome. Okay. I want to talk about managing and training people. So first of all, in the previous podcast, we kind of talked about insulated bubble people who live in kind of or work in an area where they're kind of, insulated from the realities of the market, of making a payroll, right? Paying people, managing people, and how, the ups and downs of that. And so when you're hiring people, like what are the requirements for people to work for you?
It's very simple. I just need somebody who, that has the mental acuity to take care of the paperwork that I need to have taken care of, which is not really that difficult. Somebody who can write a pawn ticket, somebody who can understand how to make sure that the gun forms are filled out. But primarily, I just need somebody that's dependable and has I'm looking for somebody who's friendly and I can count on.
But also there's another requirement.
Well, I mean, they need to be 18. Are you talking about the requirement of not having
You say that they have to speak Spanish.
Oh yeah, okay. I'm okay. Yeah, well, that's a requirement I have for my business because most of my customers are Hispanic.
What would you say to somebody who's like, well, that's kind of like?
I had a lady came in one time, a black lady came in, and we were taking applications, and she goes, "Can I get an application?" I said, "Sure." And she starts filling out. I said, "Do you speak Spanish?" And then she said, "No, I don't." I said, "Well, I mean, I only hire people who speak Spanish." And she goes, "Well, isn't that kind of racist?" And I'm like,
you knew what I was going to ask you.
I said, "No, it's a job requirement." I said, "Ma'am, I would love to hire a person of color who spoke Spanish because that would cover more bases for me because I have a lot of black clientele too.
Yeah.
And I would love to have somebody who's black who was fluent in Spanish."
Yeah.
I'd hire you on. I don't even need to interview you. I'd hire you. But I mean, I have a requirement for this job, and you don't have that ability. It just stops right there. It's like if I needed you to fix my toilet and you didn't have any plumbing experience, I wouldn't hire you either.
So go learn Spanish, come back, and I'll hire you. Basically.
Exactly. Well, I mean, I don't need them to learn Spanish. I need them to be fluent. There's a big difference.
Okay.
Because I don't know if you know much about the Hispanic culture, but they don't like talking to people who just know Spanish. They want to talk to people who sound like them and the colloquialisms and all that kind of stuff. They want to feel comfortable. If you're not speaking the language to them the way that they speak it, they don't feel comfortable and they're not going to trust you.
Yeah, that's true. And I think you've talked about how like a lot of your business is built on like the relationships and the trust you have with your customers, like how important it is.
For us, that's we build relationships with customers. We've got our customers that we've got so many customers who been doing business with us for 25 years. I mean, I'm doing business with them. I'm doing business with their children. I'm doing business with their grandchildren.
Yeah.
So it's been a long time, and they know us, and we know them, and it's a wonderful relationship.
Can you talk about kind of your managerial philosophy, like how you manage your people?
I manage my people. This is another interesting thing. So another thing that always caught my attention, reading is a different, and this is going to be a strange segue, but I was reading about the difference between the Russian military and the United States military.
Okay.
And the Russian military is very authoritarian, where they have it's top down. They have orders, and the U.S. military is different. They give their frontline commanders a lot more autonomy. Okay. And so when you have the commander that's on the battlefield can make up his own mind to go do stuff, they can do that. They've seen Russians who were making an attack and they get to this bridge and they could have taken that bridge and gone way more because the enemy crumbled, but they didn't have orders to do so. They sat there and missed the opportunity to take this bridge because they're waiting for Moscow to give them orders. Yeah. And then in that meantime, the enemy reconstituted itself and they lost that opportunity. And I remember reading that and thinking that was a very profound thing for me. So how I train my people is to have autonomy on the counter. I want them to be able to make decisions based on their knowledge of the customer. And they have the freedom so I don't like to give strict rules. I like to give principles.
Okay.
And then they operate and make their best decision inside of that.
What happens if they make like a bad decision that costs you money? What do you do then?
It costs me money. And
well, how do you? But like, you don't want them to continue to do that, though, to make you lose money.
And then here's the art of doing what I do. How is it that you can correct this, but you don't want to tamp down this idea? If they made a decision and they made a wrong decision, but the principle behind the decision was good, and they were trying to do a good thing, they just kind of went too far. Well, you don't want them to not try to make that same decision in the future.
You don't want them to be afraid to take risk, a little bit of risk.
Exactly. I want them to be able to take risk and allow them the freedom to do that. And, when you let people do that, they're going to make mistakes. It's just going to happen. But as long as it's not the same mistake, my father used to always say, as long as it's not the same mistake over and over again.
Because there's got to be a point where there's got to be a point where they're just repeating the same thing over and over, the same mistake. So how do you handle that when the same mistake?
If they start making the same mistake over and over again, I get rid of them.
Do you give them heads up though?
Absolutely. We talk about it. Hey, this is what happened. Don't do it this way again. And if they do it that way exactly again, hey, we talked about this. I expect you to learn from your mistakes. And and if you can't do this, then don't do it that way. I've only had to get rid of like one person in all the years for that kind of thing. Most of the people I get rid of is from not being on time to work or from stealing.
Wasn't there like a guy who literally couldn't count?
Could not count.
Yeah. So this is where, the education system will move people on and on and on because we don't want to hold people back when they don't meet the proficiency in math.
This kid came in and the first thing you do is you got to count your drawer and write down the stuff.
I was doing it at 13. I used to do it when I was like 13, 12.
There's a piece of paper. You count the nickels, the dimes, the quarters, and you write down there's $1.50 in pennies and $2.30 in dimes, so on and so forth. Yeah. And he was there for like 30 minutes. And, and I'm like, what's going on? He goes, I'm just counting intimidates me. And I'm like, counting, not math, but I guess counting is part of math. But I mean, 1, 2, I said, yeah, bud, you're not going to work out, man. This is all we do here is count.
You didn't catch us in the interview?
I didn't ask him in the interview. I mean, I just
assumed. You assume basic education level
in this country. Do you know how to read?
No, not really.
Okay. Would you find it necessary to say, hey, can you count?
If you have a high school diploma, it's kind of, and like we think you can do it.
Don't have a high school diploma. I think somebody should know how to count.
Yeah.
Okay. And so anyway, I said, you're not going to work out. And his mom called me.
His mom? Why?
His mom called.
Was she yelling at you?
No, but she wanted to know why did my son? Why did you let him go?
How old was he?
He was like 18.
Okay.
And so I said he can't. He's not comfortable counting. Well, what makes you say that? Because he told me that. And I said, man, that's all we do here is count. I mean, we're doing transactions. I mean, not only do I need him to count, I need him to be able to do math too, making change. And if you can't count, you can't. I mean, it's there's nothing you can do for me if you can't count.
Reading, writing, arithmetic.
Exactly.
3 R's are super important.
And so, yeah, it was that situation.
I've like worked at a lot of, different places over the years, and like they have like a whole training regimen. Like, do you like have like, I don't think I've ever actually asked this. Like, do you have like a streamlined kind of training process, or is it all kind of like off the cuff when you're training people?
I mean, we have a training manual.
You have a training manual?
Yeah.
I've never seen it.
Well, it's because it's really more of an outline. And because we're such a small operation, I train people or Pablo trains people.
Only y'all two, the manager or you?
Yeah, but I mean, other people do too. Yeah. I mean, once you get people to where they can do the basics, then they kind of just learn from everybody else as they go. And so, and the problem with that is we want them on the counter and producing as fast as possible. And I've never felt the need to come have a really regimented training situation. I probably would do better with that, but the problem with that is I want to see if somebody's worthwhile. You know what I mean?
Because it takes resources to train people, to take the time, pull people away from the counter to train them.
Not only the person that you're training, but the person that's doing the training.
Yeah.
It costs a lot of money to train people and lost productivity and things of that nature. And another thing is I don't care how good of an how well you interview people, you don't really know somebody's going to work out until you actually get them and work with them for a while. And so we train them just enough to see how they're going to work out. And 2 or 3 weeks later, if they're working out, then we start training more.
You give them the basics of what they have to be able to do in the moment.
Bare minimum. Because I used to train people in depth, and then you spend a week training somebody, and then 3 days later, they start showing up late for work and you're getting rid of them. Yeah. And you're saying to yourself, well, I just wasted all this time training this person. If I would have known they were going to be this, late to work all the time, I wouldn't have wasted my time. And so it's evolved over the years to where I just train just enough to see what's going to, what they're going to do. And then as they prove themselves to me, then we train more, then we train more,
You
then we
put
train
more,
more.
you'll put more into them
Right,
because you're going to get the
we're a
value out of
small
it.
business. We, these man hours are precious, and it's expensive.
I have two questions before I forget. One, because like you mom know well aware that I'm trying to become an educational psychologist, where all I'm doing research is just like on how like human learning. That's all I'm really interested in, human learning, specifically boys, how they learn, best environments for that. Like, what have you learned over the years about how people learn and like what works best and how to teach them? What have you learned?
What works best for me is I have to interact with the person a little bit, and I have to there's no one way that works for everybody.
Yeah.
And the problem is you're coming at it from like a school setting where you have to have policies.
Yeah, we do.
And
We have to have policies.
you don't have the freedom that I do to change what's going on based on who you're dealing with. I mean, just think if you could have a one-on-one with teachers of the students you class, the speed at which you teach something. I mean, the class, you got a class of 25 people. The speed of the class is being held down by the slowest person in the class.
Yeah, I once taught a class that had 34 kids in it. And the 5 who you can't get to stop talking or to get on task, that ruin it for everybody else.
Exactly. And so,
and you're as a teacher, you're evaluated by your, I don't want to say worst students, but your ill-behaved students, how you manage them.
Yes. And you got one kid in there is causing a lot of trouble. It can
and
really
you can't get rid of them because the No Child Left Behind policy.
Exactly.
Has changed the students' success seeds act. I forget what it's
and
called.
And that's an example of, this top-down authoritative kind of way of doing things. You can't, in education, at least in public education, those teachers don't have the freedom that I give my employees on the counter of my micro business. Now, it's a completely different thing.
We do in the sense that we can teach the way we want to teach, but in the sense of behavior, we don't. Not really. We can control the procedures and the rules we have in our classroom, but like to remove kids and keep them removed, and we don't have as much.
And this is just kind of a segue based on stuff that we talked about in the last podcast. It's one of the problems I have with a national education department.
Yeah.
They're so far away from, the classroom that they're making these big mandates and want this one stamp thing to fit the whole country. And, I don't see how that's going to be very efficient.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it kind of reminds me of Catherine Burblesing. She's like the headmistress of this amazing school, which I got to visit last year in London. It's called the Michaela School. And they're very strict. They have kids walk in the hallway in a straight line. They are not allowed to talk. It's just very regimented in how they do everything. And so the school was actually sued because a family said that they should have prayer rooms because a big portion of their student population are Muslim. And so they should have prayer rooms. But, one of the big ethos of their school is like, they walk in lines together. They sit in the lunchroom. Like they don't just let kids willy-nilly walk the hallways. And so having a prayer room where some kids would be leaving in the middle of lunch and they don't have enough room, they have to change all of their policies and their rules and just how they run everything. It would just totally just change their environment, like change their school. Like luckily they actually ended up winning and they didn't have to do the prayer rooms. But that's kind of what we're talking about. Like
right.
if they had said all schools have to have prayer rooms, like depending upon the school and how that school is run, it would just mess it up.
I get it. And that's an example of when you let somebody on the front lines deal with things, they're far more efficient and effective.
Oh yeah, for sure. Okay. I wanted to ask, there are quite a few stereotypes about pawn shops. Quite a few. Mom and I were talking yesterday, and yeah, I'm going to say talking. Mom just said ranting, but whatever floats your boat.
Yes.
But one of the things that Mom was saying, and I was like, yeah, you're kind of right, is that she was saying, people think like pawn shops screw over people, like that they're taking advantage of them. Like they're not giving them like a high enough loan or like the interest rate. What is the interest rate at pawn shops typically? Is it regulated or?
It's regulated in Texas. It's regulated by the Office of the Consumer Credit Commissioner.
What's the interest rate that they have to pay you?
Interest rate is, you're talking about monthly?
Sure. Yeah.
It's like 15% or 20%.
Oh my gosh. I should have known that, but I've never actually, that's 15-20%. That is really high.
It is.
So what would you say to somebody who said, you're screwing people over like 15-20% interest? That's ridiculous.
I would say, yes, the interest rate is high, but understand we're making very small loans. Yeah. Walk into a bank with the best credit rating in the world and try to borrow $50. That they don't want to loan you that small amount of money. It'll take them more time and effort and the expense preparing the paperwork. They'll say, we'll loan you $2,500, but we can't make any money loaning you $50 or $100 or $500.
Also, don't some people who come in, they can't get a loan from a bank even if they wanted to because their credit?
Our customers, the reason they come to us is they don't have good credit where they could borrow money, or the credit they have is their credit cards are maxed out. Okay. And these are small, short-term loans. And the advantage that you have in a pawn shop is there's no credit report involved. You bring your merchandise in, you leave that as deposit for the money that you borrowed. You come back, you pick it up. If you choose not to pick it back up, it doesn't affect your credit report at all. Mm-hmm. So it's a tool, and it's like anything else. If it's not designed for you to go borrow money to buy a car with a pawn loan. That's not what it's for. It's short-term people. I got my light bills due on Tuesday. I don't get paid till Friday. It's that idea because
you're like mom has said, and I think you told me this too. Y'all, when y'all were broke early on in your marriage, you had a necklace.
Oh, I used to pawn this necklace all the time.
How much would you get for it?
I would only get $80, for it, because that's just what we needed for groceries for the week. But this, tells you how long goes it in that bin. But we would pawn this back and forth all the time.
And then when people don't give you back your money that they're loaning from you, that you're loaning to them, you sell their merchandise to get your money
correct. Back. They've got about a certain amount of time to come bring the money back plus the interest, and they get their merchandise back.
Aren't you kind of flexible though?
We're very flexible because our business model is different than a lot of places. A lot of places you have 60 days, and on the 61st day they pull your merchandise. I'm not like that. I don't want people's merchandise. If I had my way, I would never pull their merchandise.
Yeah.
People say, hey, my stuff's due on the 5th. I don't get paid till the 15th. Can you hold it for me? And we do that. It's one of the reasons we've had the clientele we've had for as many years as we've had it, because those kinds of things.
And something I was watching is that Ben Shapiro, he goes around, he talks to all these college campuses, and at the end, he always does a Q&A where students come up and ask questions. So there's this kid that walked up and talked to him about how, why, basically the kind of premise is if a business owner owns a pencil factory, they make pencils, he's the business owner, he owns a factory and he owns all the materials, but without me, the worker, it would just be wood and lead. I, the worker, put it together. The business owner wouldn't sell what they had without me. And Ben Shapiro's point is, the business owner paid for the thousands of dollars to buy the materials, to lease the factory, to pay the workers, and they also, because they take on all the risk, they get a lot of the benefits. Was kind of his point.
There's a lot more to being a successful company that manufactures, markets, and sells pencils. Mm-hmm. What's a pencil going to look like that you're going to build? What attributes is it going to have that's going to make it sell more than, say, this guy's pencil over here?
Yeah.
You've got to design the pencil. You've got to acquire the materials to make the pencil. You have to acquire the machinery that it takes to make the pencil. You have to acquire the location that it takes to make the pencil. You have to come up with the training to, when the guy that they're talking about first showed up to work, he didn't know how to make a pencil. Employee.
It's almost like this kid thinks that what you're listing off is not as important as what the worker does putting those pieces together. But in actuality, what you're talking about takes a lot of time, thought, planning. Not anybody can do this, which is why businesses more oftentimes, 1 in 4 fail.
It depends on what time frame you're going on. It's just it's an extension of what I was saying earlier. Just because you're a good cook doesn't make you good at running a restaurant. 2 completely different skill sets.
Yeah.
Completely different skill sets. You've got to manage risk. You got to market this pencil. And then you've got to compete with other people who make pencils. Okay. And you've got to deal with all of these things. And you're taking the risk. To set up to build pencils or anything else, that's an out-of-pocket expense. There's no guarantee that you're gonna that you're going to be successful. Like you said, most businesses go broke. Where does that capital come from? And if this guy that's making the pencils, if the owner goes bankrupt, well, he loses his job, but he hasn't lost anything other than he hasn't lost anything.
He goes and gets a new job.
He hasn't lost his life savings that the owner put in to start this business.
Yeah.
Okay. He doesn't have a debt, or he doesn't have an unpaid debt that this business owner likely has that's going to have a judgment against him. And now he's probably not going to be able to do anything for a very long time.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of risks that are taken on by the business owner. And so, yes, that's, if he was a part owner, it would be different.
I want to talk about the risks for a second. Can you list some of the risk or the issues that have come from you and mom owning the businesses, all the bad things that have happened to y'all that y'all have had to pay for that the employees didn't? Let's list a couple of them. I list them too. You go first, though.
Okay. Well, we could just talk about the number of times the store's been broken into by burglars.
And crazy how they broken in.
Oh, we've had cars driven through our walls on 3 separate occasions.
So then you had to put up those, what are they called?
We had to spend $15,000 putting in those poles in the ground so they can't steal a car and use the car as a battering ram.
And ramming
through the wall. I mean, you go to our building now, you'll see all these different colored brick in 3 separate locations. Over the years, we've had 3 different cars crash through our walls. And then of course the alarm goes off. They run in and grab what they grab, and they do, $20,000 worth of damage to the building and steal $800 worth of stuff, not including the car that they stole to do this thing. And we've had people, they've torn holes in our roof and come in through the ceiling on a number of occasions.
Yeah.
Just all of that. You've got those issues. You've got regulatory issues that come out. For example, it didn't really affect us that much because we don't have that military people, but they passed a law that says that if you have active duty military, they capped what your interest rate is for these people that are active duty and the families of active duty and the families. So if you're the wife or the son or something of active duty military, that caps what you can put, the interest rate in, which is not very much.
So it's like kind of impacting your profit.
Well, you can't make enough money if you can only charge somebody, if you're going to loan somebody $200 and you can charge them, $1 a month, you can't make your overhead's too high. It's the business model doesn't work. There's a reason why the interest rate is high as it is on these very small loans. It's no different than anything else.
The incentive for them to pay them back is just not there.
It's no different than anything else. You go buy anything from a store, potato chips cost a lot more in the little single-sized potato chip bag than if you go to Costco and get that big 5-gallon bucket full of them. Mm-hmm. It's the volume, how much you're buying at one time changes the cost of delivery. And the smaller you buy, the per piece that you're buying is going to cost more per unit.
And it's not even just the break-ins that y'all have had, but it's also like injuries on property and stealing by employees and customers.
We had a lady that injured herself in our store. We were sued for $350,000.
Can we talk about how she got injured, please?
This lady came into the store and she redeemed a circular saw. And
it's her saw, right?
She claims it was her saw. I'm assuming it was her saw. And so my guy hands the saw to her. She goes, well, I guess I better check this thing. And he goes, okay, you want me to plug it in for you? And she goes, yeah. And so she has the saw in her hand and she takes her other hand and she cuts her other hand underneath where the blade is. And then he plugs it in and then she pulls the trigger and the blade cuts her finger.
So she pulls the trigger. So he doesn't plug it in and it goes. No, he plugs it in.
She claims that. Okay. But that's not what happened. He plugged it in and she did the thing and it cut her finger. It required,
How bad was the cut?
It was, she required some stitches. It wasn't a minor cut, but she didn't lose a digit or anything like that. But it was a cut. And so she ended up suing us for $350,000.
Just because she's on your property.
Yeah, the Texas Hammer, that's
well, why did she change lawyers?
Well, she didn't change lawyers. That's what he does. He takes the thing and then he hands it off to another lawyer and probably gets a piece of that cut. But nevertheless, so she ends up settling with our insurance company for like $35,000. There's that,
No, it's not even your fault because you weren't even there, but because you're the owner, you carry all
well,
the
it happened
risk.
in our business. So anything happens in your business, you're going to be liable.
Even though
know what
you
I mean?
like probably weren't even there at the time that it was happening.
Well, yeah, but it's still, it's our place. We're
Well, that's
responsible.
my point. You carry all the risk. The
Exactly.
employee doesn't get
No,
sued, even
no.
like whether it's his fault or not, which I don't think it was, but like you carry all the risk. Okay. Can you tell the story about the time that you almost had to shoot somebody in the shop?
Okay. We had a customer came in through the door. It was just your mother and I by ourselves working the store alone. And this large individual comes in the door and he's carrying something in his hand and he's muttering to himself. And I can hear him and he's you can just tell he's not a happy camper when he's coming in. And he's like, you screwed me. Now I'm fixing to kill you. I'm going to kill you. And he's just muttering this back and forth. And I keep hearing him say, I'm fixing to kill you. I'm fixing to kill you.
Yeah.
And he's advancing on me with purpose. You know what I mean? And I mean, he's coming right at me. And so when he gets within range of me, I just kind of launch into him like so. And it knocks him on the ground. And then I reach behind the counter and I get my pistol out. And he jumps up and I have my pistol up and I was like, dude, you come toward me again, I'm going to shoot you. And he looked at the pistol and I'd made up my mind, because I didn't know what this guy was going to do. If he advances toward me after I've given him that warning, I was going to shoot him. Okay. And so he finally looks and he stops for a second. I finally said, dude, I don't know what your problem is. I said, I don't know what you're upset about, but if you'll calm down, I said, I don't even know what's going on.
Yeah.
And he kind of stopped for a second. I said, dude, if you'll just back down a little bit and just tell me what's going on. I don't know what.
Like, why do you want to kill me?
I don't even know who you are. I mean, I've never, maybe I've seen you before, but I don't know you. I mean, I don't know what you're upset about. I have no clue.
Yeah.
And he kind of says, and so I pull out this stool. And I said, if you'll sit at the counter, let's just talk this out. And so he goes, all right, I'm cool. And I said, great, sit down and just tell me. Okay, so he tells me the story. So what had happened is he had pawned 2 rings with me and he got put in jail. And when they came out, he wasn't around to redeem them. So he gave his mother the money to come and pick the rings up. The big ring, the bulk of what the value of the ticket was, is a big man's ring. And that wasn't available because I'd sold it to somebody on layaway. And all I had was this little bitty ring left. So I told his mother, I have to get back with you on the big one, but this one I can let you have is $65 for this one. So she pays me the $65. I give her the ring. She goes back to him and gives him the little ring. And he goes, well, so they charge you $900 for this? And she told him, yeah, he charged me, not his mother.
Oh,
Keeps the rest of the money from her son and doesn't tell him that I only charged her $65 for the little lady's ring. She tells him,
oh my gosh,
that I kept the whole $900, which I didn't. And I said, no, I didn't charge her $900. I charged her $65. He goes, she told me you took $900 and this is all you gave her. I said, no. I went and got the sales receipt. I it's got her name on it. I handed it to him, $65 plus tax, 68 something or whatever it was, $60 something. And he was looking at it. He goes, what the hell? And he dawns on him that he goes, my mother almost got me killed,
Oh my gosh.
And I'm like, man, I said, listen, no. I said, and not only that, I said, look, I'll call this person that has it on layaway and explain the situation. I almost guarantee you they're going to relinquish. I'll just give them their money back and I'll sell you your ring back for what you owe on it. Now, mind you, I had sold that ring to the person on layaway for way more money than I was going to charge him, but it's his ring. I want him to have it back. So, from a business decision, at least from a profitability standpoint,
you lost money, right?
No, I didn't lose money, but I certainly didn't make as much money as I would have made by selling it to the person on layaway. But that's not my profit picture. If I do that, he can't pawn it to me again. I want my customers to be able to have their merchandise back, and I'll do whatever I can to make that happen. In the end, the customer did relinquish it out of the layaway. I refunded their money, and I sold it back to him for just what he owed on it not what we had priced out for, which is a big difference.
Yeah.
He owed the $800 on it, something like that. It priced out for like $2,000 or something like that. And anyway, he ended up getting it back, and it worked out. And he, was a great customer after that.
Do you still see him?
I haven't seen him in a while. This happened a long time ago.
Yeah.
But for like 10 years after that, Dad, thanks for not killing me. Thanks for not killing me. Because I would have done it too if I was you. I was really mad. And it worked out. But it was really, really close.
That just goes back to what you're talking about, how like you want to treat your customers well, and it's about the relationship. So like you could have, you didn't make as much money, but you wanted to, for future profit, for future relations with him.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm in it for the long haul. And, because if I sell his thing, he no longer has his thing. And he can't, the next time he needs to borrow some money, he no longer has that thing to borrow some money on. Mm-hmm. I have customers who will come and bring the same item over and over again for years. Anytime they got a little, jewelry is really convenient because it's not very big. It doesn't take up a lot of room. It gets you a lot of money.
And they kind of know how much they're going to get from you.
They're going to get. And when
don't you go up? Don't you give them more? Like because of if their history with you is good, like yes. They always come back, you'll give them $50, $100 more. If they have
a good history with me, I will give them more because, for some of my customers, they may not have good credit, but for some of my customers, their word is their bond.
Yeah.
And for those customers, they
have good credit with you.
They have good credit with me. Now, it's not a credit score per se. It's just personal history. But I've got customers that, in the pawn shop business, you never loan what something's worth or more than what it's worth. I've got customers where I will give them more money on their thing than what I could even sell their thing for. I got one lady who's been pawning her laptop to me for like a decade.
This must be like a really old, ancient laptop.
It's but it's hers. Yeah. And when she bought the thing was probably $1,000. But laptops don't cost anything anymore.
No, they don't.
You can get a brand new laptop that'll run circles around this thing for like $300. I still loan her $500 on this thing.
Yeah, Chromebook's like $250. All the schools use them. They're great.
But she's been getting $500 on this laptop for 12 years.
How much? 500?
500.
Wow.
And if she ever decides not to pick it up, I'll lose a lot of money on that because I'll be lucky to get $75 for this thing because it's so old, maybe 50.
Does she know this, you think?
She does. I think she does. But like I tell her, I said, the only reason I'm doing this, this is crazy. I should not be doing this. It's not good business sense and from a number standpoint.
Yeah.
But I'm making a loan on you. You have always done what you said you're going to do. And because that you have always done that, I'm going to reward that by doing what some people would consider to be a foolish decision by loaning you $500 on something that's nowhere near worth near $500. Not even close. I'd be lucky to get $50 for the thing if I end up with it.
Yeah. When you're talking about how much you give her, even though it's like not good business numbers, it makes me think about something Ben Shapiro said where he was talking about like pricing is kind of subjective. And like you can kind of determine what somebody's willing to pay for something, like what the pricing should be. So,
well, there's a saying we always say in the pawn shop business: something's only worth what somebody's willing to give you for it.
I think that's what Ben Shapiro actually said.
And,
so yeah,
I get people come in all the time and hey, this thing's worth $500.
To you,
it's not. Over here, okay, maybe in California, y'all can sell that for $500, but here in Houston, no, we cannot get $500 for this.
Yeah.
The market's not going to. Or I looked it up, like especially true like in guns. They got this book called the Blue Book of Gun Values.
Yeah.
And you look the book says this gun's worth $750. Yeah, well, I've never sold a gun like that for $750 in 20 years ever. I maybe get $400 for it, but I don't know where that book is trying to sell this gun, but that book isn't trying to sell it here. Yeah. It's a guideline. It's not the absolute. It doesn't work that way.
Yeah. My last question is, what would you tell somebody who says, Jack, I want to own my own business, but I'm not sure like what business I should own? What would you tell them?
You need owning your own business is a great idea. It's interesting, but be sure you're ready because it's a lot of work, man. And you're not going to make any money for quite a while. Likely to not make any money. I didn't make any take home money really for 10 years.
I mean, it's like a labor of love.
And I mean, we worked a lot of hours. It was a lot of hours. I mean, and now were we technically making money? Yes, we were. Yeah. But when you start off in business, unless you're independently wealthy, which nobody is, you have a lot of debt.
Yeah.
And every little penny that you have is going to pay down that debt.
Yeah.
And for a long time, our employees made more money than we did.
Yeah.
As far as take home money. Now, we were gaining equity because we're paying down loans and stuff, but you don't get to pay bills with that.
Yeah.
And so, yeah.
Okay.
All right.
Well, I think this is another great podcast episode where we had so many camera issues, but it's
Yes.
okay. We're just going to keep pushing on. And I did want to end it with Mom's quote that she said.
Yeah.
If you have something to lose, act like it. So,
I love that quote.
Isn't it a good one? Mom
If
is
you
a
have
really good
something
one.
to lose, act like it.
All right. Well, that's a wrap.
All right.